David marry?
David married a triplet, identical triplet, one of the Lewis girls from Potchefstroom. He married Heather, and the other two were Jessica and Wendy. The three of them came two of them came with their sister to Australia to live. They emigrated to Australia, and they were all educated girls, all very clever girls. Jessica died here. She developed a heart thing. She just dropped dead in her flat one day. She was going to visit Heather that afternoon after work. It was about 2:30. It was one of her half days, and she didn't rock up. And they went to the flat and she was dead. It was a terrible shock. I believe this is a congenital condition which they all suffer from. So they've had sort of a type of pacemaker inserted.
So, where did David get married?
David got married at the Waverley Shul in South Africa.
And now David has 2 children, is that correct?
David's got 2 children.
Can you tell me their names?
Joshua and Bianca Jade. Joshua's 27 and Bianca's 23. Neither of them are married yet, but please God, we hope for the future. They're nice kids.
Okay. And so Beverly got married in around about 1990 to Derek Horwitz.
Also in the Waverley Shul.
Also Waverley Shul. And how many kids has she got?
She's got 2 boys.
Yeah.
Also very nice boys.
What are their names?
Ryan and Jason.
And how old are they?
Ryan is, Jason just turned 21 last week, which is sometime during August, I think the 18th or something of August. And Ryan is 24.
Okay, and do they still continue to live in South Africa?
They live in South Africa. They both attended hotel school. Ryan got his diploma there, and Jason is doing very well at the hotel school. Hasn't qualified yet.
Okay. Now we're going to speak about your immigration to Australia.
Right.
So what made you choose to leave Johannesburg and come to Sydney, Australia?
The biggest wrench of my life was when David left us in 1986. He left the business. He was also very distressed to do it, but you could see it was the only choice they had. They didn't want to stay in South Africa anymore. And when they came to Australia, after about 6 or 7 months here, I couldn't stand it anymore.
In Johannesburg, you mean?
Yeah, I couldn't stand it anymore in Johannesburg. I was still in the business. Mickey and I came to visit them in their house here in Sydney, and we stayed with them for 7 weeks.
What was your first impression of Sydney when you came to visit?
I thought it was a kind of a slum area, man. I couldn't believe it.
Where was David living at the time?
He was living in Cooper Park here in the eastern suburbs. Cooper Park is the name of the suburb. It's named after Cooper Park. They were living in a sort of a semi-detached house, which was top and bottom. It wasn't 2 houses joined. They lived in the bottom half, and good friends of theirs, they became good friends, lived in the top half. Mm-hmm. And they had like virtually 1 bedroom, which they gave up to Mickey and I when we came here to visit them. They slept on the floor in the lounge on a mattress. Shame, man, when I think of it. And Mickey and I, and he was working like a dog, man.
What kind of work was he doing when he came?
He was doing what they used to do in South Africa, concrete fencing, which was extremely popular there. I don't know if you might recall that. Every second house had a concrete wall, slats. So he was told that there's no such problem here, nobody's got it, and he had good friends of his who were living here prior to his arrival to do surveys and check on, and he got the most glowing reports of how well it would go. He came here and he started this firm called Fencecrete Australia Pty Limited, which is today the parent company of his existing business. But man, when I was here, and it broke my heart. I used to go out with him working. He was working like a dog, man, like a shock, doing all the hard yards.
Did he have to do the physical? Pillars. He had to do the physical work.
Yeah, it was just David, and he had a coloured man from Durban, who they became very good friends, who helped him. But this was work that normally we would never dream of doing yourself when we lived in South Africa. This was work for 2 or 3 or 10 black men to do it. Here there was nobody to do that sort of thing. If it was white men here, you would have had to pay them virtually through your backside. You just couldn't afford it. Yeah. So they used to do it, worked very hard. I remember one night he came home for dinner, and he didn't have this. It was lifting these 10-foot or even 12-foot concrete pillars into a hole in the ground as the supports for these slats. And he couldn't pick up his knife and fork to eat the food. He was he went through hell. Anyway, thank God he kept the name, changed the business. So he was in that about a year or two.
So your first impressions of Sydney were not glowing, is that right?
Not glowing at all, except the fact that David was here like a beacon of light. There was a great attachment we had for each other. Yeah. And I was determined then and there when I saw we were going to come and live in Australia, which we did 4 years
And so
later.
When did you sell your business?
I sold my business in 1988, in June 1988. I'd been there in August 1988, and I'd been there from June 1967. So it was 22 years. And I'll just concentrate on
yes.
that.
And so was it very difficult then making a decision to come to Australia, to David and his family, and leaving your daughter?
Yeah, that was the hardest part, especially for Mickey. She was, Miriam, she was really... We were both kind of heart-sore, but we had every encouragement from her. She didn't want to stand in our way, and we were all hoping, please God, one day she would come and join us here.
So what year did you actually immigrate to Australia?
It was 1990.
So you were virtually August 1990,
August the 9th. August the 9th. And how well I remember that date is because we left on August the 8th, and we had one day to get there, and if we hadn't rocked up by August the 9th, our visas would have expired, or whatever the entry form, and we were chachomim enough to stay in South Africa as long as we possibly could to the last day. Anything could have happened. The plane could have been delayed. We really took a chance. That's how I remember the date so well.
So you were nearly 64 years old when you came to Australia.
Yes.
So what work did you do when you got here?
I didn't work the first day, but from the second day I worked for David. And I've been with David ever since.
And what kind of work do you do?
Well, at the moment, I do the accounts. I assist with the accounts. I enter the daily accounts on the computer, and I answer the phone. At the beginning, I used to work much more, but as I've got older, they've been delegating more work to David's wife has joined them. I land up in hospital for 3 weeks, things like that, and so eventually Heather joined the business.
So when you first came, you started working on the second day that you arrived.
Yeah.
What were your impressions then when you arrived, when you knew that you were going to be here permanently?
Well, I was really terribly happy to be with Dave and that, but it took us a year and a half to 2 years to get accustomed to Sydney. It was quite a wrench. It was a hell of a wrench from, you've lived in a country for 60 odd years. You know exactly where you are, you know exactly who's who, what's happening. You walk down the street, you might meet somebody or you know the buildings. Here we used to walk down the street, you're like in a different world. Didn't know a soul.
Where did you live when you first came to Australia?
We lived in a little, unit, which was a rented unit in Bondi, because I'd made a promise to Mickey that we would try it out for 6 months. if after 6 months she's not happy here, we'll go back to Johannesburg. It was the only way I could really persuade her to come. We stayed in this little furnished rented apartment for about 6 months, and then we went back to South Africa for 3 months. And we came back, and then we stayed in a unit just down the road here, and we
in Rose Bay.
And we were there up to the year 2000, and from 2000 to the present 2012, we've been living in this, which belongs to David. David bought this.
And how did you start making friends when you came to Sydney?
Look, our big connection was David's friends who we knew from South Africa, a number of them, and also I'm just thinking, we knew so many South Africans who'd been here even longer than us, and we palled up somehow. I just remember this one girl, Linda, whatever her name is, Linda, her father, and she said, please contact my parents, which we did, and we became very friendly. And then also a girl called Rebe Chodas. Rebe and Julian Chodas, we became good friends of theirs. Rebe, who I knew as a young girl of 16. And we used to go to parties, 17, 18, this little kid, a beautiful little girl. She was living here. And that's how we met. We met at shul, we used to meet people, and gradually developed.
You had a circle of friends.
Mm.
Are your friends primarily South Africans?
I would say 100%.
Okay.
I would say really 100%.
And have you managed to travel in Australia at all?
Yes, we've done trips. We went up to the Gold Coast 2 or 3 times. We went down to Hobart on 2 occasions, just Mickey and I. And we used to like going to the casino because we'd been accustomed to that in South Africa. But gradually that stopped. At the club here, the Hakawa Club, the casino, playing machines.
And what else? What other activities did you do outside of work when Mickey was still in better health?
Very little. We used to go to the cinema.
Yes.
Mickey used to go and play cards once a week with her friends.
Yes.
And she used to visit, a lot of visiting her friends. I was involved at work. It suited me down to the ground. I used to be there 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, and initially on Saturdays, until I started concentrating on going to shul, because I used to go to shul in South Africa on Saturdays. And then David also insisted, rather go to shul.
What shul do you go to?
Southhead. Southhead Synagogue. I used to go to Central when we stayed in that rented apartment in Old Southhead Road in Bondi. Now we're in the same Old Southhead Road in Rose Bay, and it's much nearer to Southhead Shul. And I used to walk to Shul. Now I can't walk there anymore, I drive. It's only a kilometre up the road.
And now that you've spent over 20 years in Sydney, Australia, what do you value about life in Australia?
Oh dear, that's such a difficult question to answer. I just value the whole existence. I've got no regrets at all for having made the move.
Do you feel freer here?
Oh yes, yes. When I read about what's happening in South Africa with the crime and the government embezzlement, there's such corruption. And I read about on the computer, when I'm finished entering the accounts and all that, I turn into the emails and read these. And it's very, very distressing to read about it. And I'm worried for my daughter. We speak to her once a week on the phone.
Whereabout does your daughter live?
I stay in Santon. in Pear Street, Santon.
And how often have you visited South Africa since?
Well, initially
arriving in
we used to go
Australia?
every year,
Yeah.
and I think that must have lasted for about 8 to 10 years. Then, and of course they used to come here. If we couldn't go there at least once a year, they would come here. But more often than not, we landed up in South Africa. And eventually it became difficult for Mickey to travel. So Beverly used to come here, and that's the situation today. Even I find travelling a little bit difficult.
And what kind of work does Derek do now? And does Beverly work at the moment also?
Yes, Derek when he got out of the army, he'd been in the army as well, he was into the food business. His father had been into little places to eat, I don't know what you call them, restaurants of sorts, and Derek and they had these takeaways and sandwiches, and they did very well. And eventually he got into computers, constructing and repairing, and he did hell of a well. And that's actually what prevented their coming to Australia. He was doing so well and making so much geld that there was a total reluctance to leave South Africa. Beverly would have come. I know she would have.
And what kind of work does Beverly do? Does she work?
Yes, Beverly now works with Derek. The last 5 years or so, they bought a nightclub in a suburb. It's called Arubra, E-R-U-B-R-A, and they work there at that nightclub mainly Friday nights, Saturday and Sunday nights. It's open throughout the week, but for the rest of the week, I think Mondays it's closed, but otherwise there is a manager there. And they were making a hell of a lot of money out of that. It really was a very successful. They paid a couple of million rand for it, but they recouped their money in less than 2 years. And that's what Beverly and Derek told us. And after that, they bought this magnificent home for cash. They did no bond. So they were obviously doing very well, and thank God they're doing that business.
And so you initially spent time with your grandsons Ryan and Jason in South Africa and here.
Yeah, they were the only ones, the family that were there, besides my brothers and whoever I had there.
Oh, so you used to visit everyone while you were there.
Oh, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your grandsons Ryan and Jason?
Ryan and Jason, not the biggest academics in the world, but they matriculated at King David's School, and thank God went into hotel school, no problem getting through. They worked hard. Jason's still doing it. There's a gap of about 3 years between Ryan and Jason, and they weren't university material. Jason might have been. Ryan certainly wasn't.
And
but
what kind of people are they?
Nice boys, man. And I'm not just saying it because they're very nice, loving kids, reserved, quiet, good-looking guys, very nice boys. Very happy with them.
And you've obviously spent a lot of time with Joshua and Bianca.
Yes, there's a good, they're devoted to us.
Can you tell me a little bit more about them, what kind of people they are?
Yes, they both were educated at the Mariah College here, both matriculated, both went to university. Joshua's a very clever guy. He knows how to adapt. From their religious days at Mariah, they've gradually drifted. They don't go to shul, and they don't, they aren't particularly unsicked or enthused with the whole Yiddishkeit scene. There's been a drift.
Yes. And does Joshua work at the moment?
Yes, he's got a very good job. I don't know the name of the firm. I never ever knew what degree he had, because every time it was, they don't get a BSc or something like we used to have in South Africa. It's some martial arts guys. I don't know what the mishmash of names and fashion and Vogue, and And the same as Bianca. She's at university, doing very well.
Yes.
She also very, very well. But don't ask me what she's doing, because I don't know.
Yes.
She tells us, but it's like a string of 8 different words. You know, if you ask me what I did, I'll say BSc, or BA, whatever, or medicine, or law. Not here, boy. Here it's a whole mishmash of anything is in university. But they both attended university. She still does. And Josh did land up with about 3 degrees, I believe, or maybe even 4. And he was a very well-liked boy. Tall, good-looking, clever, very articulate, can speak and write. Man, he's just a clever little guy, a big guy. And he got a very good job.
And you still get to see them?
Yes, we see them pretty regularly. Whenever we go, we used to go there regularly on a Friday night, or they would come here, or if they were going out, David and Heather, to friends for Friday night, we would just be home, Mickey and I, for Friday night. But generally it was 1 week here, 1 week at Wendy's flat. Wendy's lives on her own. Jessica, of course, had passed away. But when Jessica was alive, we used to go and visit them also at their flat for Friday night Shabbos dinner. And then the way things are at the moment, I would say 1 week in 3 we go there for Friday night. Or they will come here with takeaways. When we've been going there quite a lot, they'll rather come here. The whole family rock up here with takeaways and plastic knives and forks. It's a nice company, but not the nicest meals.
Mm-hmm. And so now that you've been here 22 years, you're both in your 80s.
Yes.
Can you tell me how you feel about having lived here for the last 20 years?
Very, very thankful that we made the move. It was very hard at the beginning, as I've said before,
yes, yeah.
But as the years go by, thank God we made the move. I don't know how I would have lived, how we would have lived in South Africa. I don't think we would have managed. We probably would have been living in a shanty somewhere. Or the aged home, maybe, who knows. But we would never have lived a comfortable life here.
Perhaps you can just describe for this interview where you're actually living, just for your relatives overseas.
Living at the moment?
Yes.
Well, we live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a lovely area called Rose Bay. The apartment belongs to David and Heather. They bought it for us to live in.
And can you just tell us how close the sea is to you and the surroundings?
Yes, we've not virtually within walking distance. I've got to qualify this, but I can't walk like I used to. But when I could walk like a mensch, we were within walking distance of the sea.
And which is the most famous beach that you're close to?
In the Bondi Beach area. Our suburb, Rose Bay, adjoins Bondi North, Dover Heights, and Bondi Beach. Bondi North, and Dover Heights. Bondi in the west, Bondi Beach in the northeast, and Dover Heights in also northeast of our suburb, Rose Bay.
As we're about to conclude,
right.
I would just like to ask you, Mickey, if there's anything else you would like to add to this interview.
Yes, I would like to stress that all the opinions I've expressed in the last, since the start of this interview, of this recording, that all opinions are 100% my own. Nobody's influenced me. If I've said anything about anyone which can hurt, believe me, that was the last thing I wanted to do, if I have done so. Otherwise, it's just the way I saw things, the way I see things, and it's the MS, it's the truth. But my opinion, that's how I see it. Regarding our existence today, well, I tell a lot of people when I meet them, I'll give you some good advice, brother. Don't grow old. You can't help comparing what you were and what you are now. Was it given is given, what was, and what is. And believe me, it's not easy growing old. You just feel totally a different person. They don't let you drive, and I can understand why. They don't let you drive at night, that is. David won't let me drive at night. But I drive to work every day, and some days I'm there in winter, particularly till late, and I drive home in the dark. But that's the way he sees it. I personally feel I can drive just as well in the dark at night as I can in the day. But this is the type of thing. You grow old, you can't do what you used to do. We stopped going to cinema. We used to go to the cinema every Sunday afternoon. It was a pleasure, man. Up the road, and good shows. It was a lovely, the latest shows. We haven't been to a cinema, I would say, for 9-10 years now. And you're restricted now so many ways, and that's just the whole story of going old. I'll be 86 this year. Mickey's just turned 81. And
so you've been married for how many years now?
We celebrated our 60th wedding anniversary in March of this year. We got married in March 1952.
And so is there anything you would just like to end the interview by telling us about? How did you stay married in such a beautiful relationship for so long?
Well, I've never regretted marrying my little Nicola. I've always looked after her, and she's been a damn good wife and mother. She really has been. It breaks my heart to see her getting older. It really does, and not so well. What can you do? And the only thing, it was always a matter of give and take. We had our differences. Never anything serious. I never laid a hand on her. She never laid a hand on me. Never swore at each other. Just a good, comfortable living. We got on very, very well, and always did, and always, please God, will. God knows for how many years left. But as I've told some good friends, don't grow old. Anyway, there's not much more to say.
Okay.
I think of where you can pretty well wind up the whole thing.
Well, thank you very much for the privilege of interviewing you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very much.
So have I. Thank you very much for doing the whole job for us.
Mickey would just like to add a postscript.
Yes, well, just to get back to our 60 years of married life, and please God, it'll be a good few years more. It was love mainly the thing. We loved and respected each other all along the line. Probably that's all I need to say, really. That's it. Nothing.